Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
Dear listeners, before we get started, drop a quick hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have any suggestions for us to make the channel better, please let us know. Now let's start with the story. Victor Delaney stood over the architectural blueprints spread across his home office desk, his calloused fingers following the fine lines of what would soon rise as San Francisco's newest luxury high-rise. At 43, Victor had built Delaney Construction from the ground up, turning it into one of the most respected firms on the West Coast. His success was rooted in tireless effort and uncompromising standards qualities that earned him both admiration and intimidation in equal measure. "You're burning the midnight oil again," Nina said from the doorway, her voice smooth, a glass of red wine hanging delicately from her manicured hand. Victor didn't glance up. The Portman deadline got moved. "Someone has to make sure we don't lose the contract." Nina sighed, a rehearsed sound of weary frustration. "You promised you'd stop with the late nights, Victor. Alyssa's swim meet is tomorrow." He finally looked up at his wife of 15 years. At 39, Nina remained stunning, honey blonde waves cascading down her shoulders, emerald eyes still capable of stopping a room. Tonight, she wore a sleek black cocktail dress, one he didn't recognize. "Dinner with the Peterson account?" he asked, gesturing toward her outfit. Something flickered behind her expression. "Charity committee meeting. I told you last week." Victor nodded, though the memory escaped him. Lately, their conversations had been reduced to logistical exchanges like business partners sharing a calendar. He couldn't recall the last time they truly talked. "I'll be there for Alyssa," he said, returning to his blueprints. "I've never missed a meet." After she left, Victor leaned back, thoughts drifting to their daughter. 16, fiercely independent, Alyssa had inherited his drive and Nina's grace. No matter how chaotic his world became, Alyssa remained his anchor. His phone buzzed. Luca Harmon, his oldest friend and head of company security, had texted. "Need to talk tomorrow. Something you should know. Sullivan's, 7 a.m. Victor frowned. Luca wasn't one for vague messages. He responded with a simple yes, unaware that the ground beneath his carefully built life had already begun to shift. The next morning, Victor slid into a booth at Sullivan's Diner across from Luca, a broad-shouldered ex-Marine with a permanent 5 o'clock shadow and a loyalty Victor never questioned. "This better be good," Victor said, ordering his usual black coffee. "Zoning commissions at 9. Luca's expression was grim. "It's about Nina." Victor froze, coffee halfway to his lips. "What about her?" "She's been seeing someone. Regularly." Luca pushed a manila envelope across the table. "I didn't want to believe it, but Davis from our security team saw her at the Meridian Hotel 3 weeks ago. I've been checking into it since." Expression calm, Victor opened the envelope. Inside were photos Nina entering the upscale hotel. The timestamps told their own story: repeated visits over the past month. In one photo, she walked beside a tall man with dark hair, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. "His name is Dorian Rivers," Lucas said. "Some hotshot real estate developer from LA. He's been in town the past few months working on that Riverside project." Victor studied the man's face, committing every detail to memory. "How long?" "At least 3 months. That much we can confirm." Victor slowly put the photos back into the envelope, moving with care. To most people, he probably looked like he was just going over some paperwork, but his tight grip showed he was barely holding in his anger. "I appreciate your discretion," he said finally, his voice low and disturbingly composed. "Keep this between us for now." Luca nodded, troubled by the unnerving stillness in his friend's demeanor. "What are you going to do?" Victor stood, placing enough cash on the table to cover both their coffees. "Nothing yet. I need more information." His eyes, now cold and sharp as winter steel, locked with Luca's. "And Luca, I want everything on Dorian Rivers. Everything." As Victor walked toward his car, his phone rang. It was Alyssa's swim coach. His daughter had been in a car accident on the way to morning practice. She was unconscious. They were rushing her to St. Francis Memorial Hospital. The ground beneath Victor's world gave way. Victor's Audi sliced through morning traffic like a missile, emergency flashers blinking as he weaved between cars. His thoughts spiraled with terrifying possibilities. The coach hadn't known much, only that Alyssa's car had been T-boned at an intersection, and she was unconscious when paramedics arrived. He tried calling Nina. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. On the 4th attempt, she finally picked up. Her voice was groggy, thick with sleep, or something else he couldn't place. "Nina, Alyssa's been in an accident. She's at St. Francis. I'm almost there." There was a pause, followed by background noise, music, laughter. "What? Is she okay?" "I don't know yet. She was unconscious when they brought her in." Victor's grip tightened, his voice strained. "Please come now. She needs you." He heard muffled voices in the background. Then Nina's response, calm, detached froze him. I can't. I'm at a party with someone special. I'll come as soon as I can get away. The line went dead. Victor pulled up to the emergency room and barely remembered to shift into park before sprinting inside. A harried nurse pointed him toward a trauma bay, where a serious-looking man with salt and pepper hair stood over Alyssa. Mr. Delaney, the doctor said, glancing up. I'm Dr. Mitchell. Your daughter has a concussion, 3 broken ribs, and a fractured wrist. We're waiting on CT scan results to rule out internal bleeding, but for now, her vitals are stable. Victor moved to Alyssa's side. Her skin was pale beneath the gash on her forehead, her breathing shallow but steady. He gently took her uninjured hand. She was lucky, Dr. Mitchell added. The impact was on the passenger side. If she'd had someone with her. He let the thought hang. Victor nodded, relief loosening the knot in his chest. When will she wake up? Hard to say with concussions. Could be minutes, could be hours. 3 hours later, Alyssa stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open. Dad. Her voice was barely audible. I'm here, sweetheart, Victor said softly, gently squeezing her hand. You're going to be okay. Alyssa's eyes scanned the room. Where's Mom? Victor's jaw clenched. In the hours he'd sat at her bedside, Nina still hadn't shown up. His calls now went straight to voicemail. She's on her way, he said. The lies smooth but necessary. Alyssa didn't need more distress. Around noon, with Alyssa asleep once more, a sudden commotion in the hallway pulled Victor's attention. EMTs pushed a gurney past the door, doctors barking orders. Something about the chaos stirred a gut-deep instinct in him. He stepped into the doorway and froze. It was Nina. Blood streaked her face, her dress torn, an oxygen mask covering most of her features. Behind the gurney, equally disheveled and sporting a cut above his eye, was the man from Luca's photos, Dorian Rivers. Victor stood rooted in place, the scene too surreal to comprehend. Dr. Mitchell spotted him and quickly approached, pulling him aside. Mr. Delaney, he said in a low voice, glancing around before continuing. I need to be honest with you. Your wife and that man were in a car accident, same intersection as your daughter, just the other side. They were? Victor asked, stunned. They'd been drinking. The man was driving. The implications began snapping into place in Victor's mind like a trap closing. Alyssa, on her way to early morning practice, hit at the intersection. Hours later, Nina and her lover, intoxicated, crashing in the same place after fleeing the scene of the first accident and doubling back. Are you telling me they caused my daughter's crash? Victor's voice was cold, lethal. Dr. Mitchell hesitated. The police are still investigating, but preliminary reports indicate their vehicle ran the red light that led to Alyssa's accident. They fled, then returned later still intoxicated and wrecked themselves. A terrible stillness settled in Victor's chest. Nina's betrayal hadn't just broken their family. It had nearly destroyed their daughter. And instead of rushing to Alyssa's side, Nina had continued indulging in the night's debauchery. Thank you, Victor said quietly, his tone calm, but carrying the weight of fury. Please keep this between us while I decide how to tell my daughter. Dr. Mitchell nodded, somber. Of course. But the police will want to speak with you soon. Back in Alyssa's room, Victor was already planning. He dialed Tobias Wells, his attorney, requesting his presence at the hospital immediately. Then he called Luca. I need security on Alyssa's room. No one gets in but medical staff and me. He paused, then added, Nina's here. She was in the car with Rivers. They caused the accident. Luca sucked in a breath. Jesus, Victor. What do you need? Everything. In motion. Now. Victor ended the call and looked at Alyssa's bruised and fragile face. The injuries were physical visible, but the betrayal that had caused them ran deeper. And in that moment, something irrevocable shifted inside Victor Delaney. Whatever love or mercy he had once harbored for Nina or anyone who dared harm his family was gone. He would make them pay. Not quickly, not loudly, but fully, quietly, absolutely, without mercy. 2 days later, Alyssa was discharged into Victor's care. She only knew her mother had also been in an accident and was still recovering. Victor had decided to spare her the truth for now. Nina remained hospitalized with internal injuries, including a punctured lung. Dorian Rivers, treated and released, had been arrested shortly after for DUI, fleeing the scene, and reckless endangerment. He was out on bail within hours. In Victor's home office, the transformation was complete. The space had become a war room. Spread across his desk were the files, photos, and reports compiled by Luca and a seasoned private investigator named Russell Graves. A man who operated in moral gray areas but delivered results. Rivers has a history of DUIs, Russell said, gesturing toward a document. 2 in California. Both charges were reduced. His family has connections in LA, Victor replied, nodding as he took it in. And the affair? He asked. It's been going on for almost 7 months, Russell said, sliding over hotel records and credit card statements. These cover everything: restaurants, hotels, even a private flight to Vegas 3 months ago. They weren't exactly discreet. What about his business? That Riverside development? Russell gave a thin smile. Now that's where it gets interesting. The financing is a mess. Rivers' development is leveraged to the edge. He's been scrambling for investors, your wife included. Victor's eyes darkened. She doesn't have investment capital. No, but you do. Russell pushed forward bank statements. Almost $2 million withdrawn from joint accounts over the past 6 months. She's been funding him, Mr. Delaney. Victor felt a cold fury rise in his chest. Nina hadn't just betrayed their marriage or endangered Alyssa, she'd been using his money to support her lover's failing venture. Just then, Tobias Wells, his attorney, arrived as Russell was leaving. His expression was grim, matching the weight of the situation. I filed the emergency petition for separation of assets, Tobias said. Under the circumstances, the judge approved it immediately. Your personal and business finances are protected. Any other matters? Tobias placed a folder on the desk. Divorce papers are ready. I also spoke with the district attorney. They're considering upgrading the charges against Rivers to include assault with a deadly weapon. The evidence strongly suggests he caused Alyssa's accident. Victor nodded, already thinking ahead. And custody? Given Nina's actions and Alyssa's age, I don't anticipate any issues. The judge will consider Alyssa's preference. She'll choose me, Victor said, his voice certain. After Tobias left, Victor poured himself a rare glass of whiskey and stood by the window, gazing out at the San Francisco skyline. In construction, he had learned that sometimes rebuilding required total demolition. Nina and Dorian had demolished his family, his trust, his sense of safety. Now he would dismantle their lives with the same calculated precision he applied to his business. His phone buzzed. A text from St. Francis Hospital. Nina was asking to see him. Victor smiled coolly. The first move in his carefully orchestrated plan was underway. The next morning, he entered Nina's hospital room, his face wearing the concerned expression of a dutiful husband. Tucked under his arm was a folder filled with evidence. Nina's pale face brightened with genuine relief. Victor, she whispered. Thank God. No one will tell me anything about Alyssa. She's home. She's recovering, he said. Sitting down, though, he kept a measured distance. Tears welled in Nina's eyes. I need to explain about that night. You mean the night our daughter nearly died because of you? His tone remained light, almost conversational. Nina's face went white. What are you talking about? Victor opened the folder, laying out police reports and witness statements. You and Dorian ran the red light that caused Alyssa's accident. And instead of helping her coming when I called, you kept partying. Hours later, you crashed at the same intersection. That's not we didn't know, she stammered, panic creeping into her voice. 7 months, Victor continued, voice steady. That's how long you've been sleeping with him. He placed more papers on top bank statements this time. And $1,800,000. That's how much of my money you've handed him. He placed the bank statements atop the accident reports. Nina's face crumpled. Victor, please. I made a terrible mistake, but I love you. We can fix this. Victor stood, adjusting his suit jacket with deliberate precision. There's nothing to fix, Nina. By the time you're discharged, you'll find your access to our accounts revoked, divorce papers waiting, and a restraining order in place. You won't be allowed to contact Alyssa until she chooses otherwise. You can't do this, Nina whispered, stunned by the finality in his tone. Victor leaned closer, his voice low and icy. Oh, I can. And that's just the beginning. You and your lover tried to destroy everything that mattered to me. Now I'm going to take your lives apart, piece by piece, until you both wish you'd never crossed me. He straightened, his expression returning to that of the composed, concerned husband. Get well soon, Nina. As he turned and walked out, he heard her break into sobs, the first genuine display of emotion he'd seen from her in years. It didn't move him in the slightest. In the corridor, Victor pulled out his phone and sent a text to Luca. Phase 1 complete. Begin Phase 2. The demolition had begun. Now came the construction of revenge. 3 weeks after the accident, Victor sat across from Russell Graves in a private booth at Noir, an elite club where discretion was part of the price tag. Alyssa was recovering well, staying with Victor's sister in Marin County while he put his plans into motion. She still didn't know the full story of her mother's role in the crash. He had promised to tell her when she returned in 2 days. Rivers is getting desperate, Russell reported, sliding a thumb drive across the table. Since you cut off Nina's funding and the DUI news reached his investors, his development's hanging by a thread. He's meeting with some shady characters tomorrow night. Victor pocketed the drive without a word. And Nina? She's holed up at the Fairmont, living off personal credit cards. She's burning through money fast. Valerie Thompson's been visiting almost daily, usually leaves in tears. Russell paused. Nina's tried to contact Alyssa 12 times. My sister blocked her number as instructed, Victor said calmly, unsurprised. Nina had always been persistent, once a trait he admired. She hasn't retained any other attorney besides the court-appointed one, Russell added. Either she can't afford better, or she still doesn't grasp how serious this is. She will, Victor said, a cold smile forming. He checked his watch. I've got another meeting. Keep eyes on both of them. Across town at a waterfront restaurant, Victor slipped into a booth across from Alexis Palmer, a poised brunette in her late 30s who ran Palmer Media, San Francisco's top PR firm. Victor Delaney in the flesh, she said, raising her martini glass with amusement. When you requested this meeting, I was intrigued. You've always handled PR internally. This isn't about Delaney Construction, Victor replied, signaling a server for scotch. It's about Dorian Rivers. Her brow lifted. Rivers? The Riverside Project guy? What's your interest? Victor slid a folder across the table. Inside you'll find documentation showing Rivers has been bribing city officials to expedite permits, ignoring environmental restrictions, and misleading investors about his financials. Alexis opened the folder. Her initial skepticism gave way to sharp interest as she reviewed the contents. These are serious accusations, Victor. Why bring this to me instead of the authorities? The authorities will get their copy, Victor said, but your firm specializes in reputation management, both building and dismantling it. He leaned in. I want Rivers' name to be radioactive in this city by the end of the week. Alexis tilted her head. And what exactly did Mr. Rivers do to earn such hostility? Victor's expression turned steely. He nearly killed my daughter while driving drunk with my wife in the car. Recognition flickered across Alexis's face. The crash that's been all over the society pages. I didn't realize the connection. She closed the folder. This would make compelling material for several journalists I know. I'm prepared to pay generously for your firm's exclusive handling of this information, Victor said. Alexis studied him quietly for a beat. It's not about money, is it? You want to ruin him completely. Victor didn't answer directly. She gave a slow, deliberate nod. My team can begin tomorrow. But understand, once this story breaks, we can't control the outcome. The fallout might hit your wife, too. Victor gave a cool, detached smile. I'm counting on it. Later that evening, Victor returned home to find Luca waiting in the study. The security chief looked tense. We've got a situation, Luca said without preamble. Rivers met today with someone new. Doesn't match his usual circle. Name's Garrett Walsh. Victor frowned. Should I recognize it? Ex-military, dishonorably discharged. Now he works as hired muscle, not the bodyguard type. The kind who solves problems permanently. Victor took that in, not with alarm, but calculation. So Rivers is desperate enough to consider violence. Looks like it. Victor considered. No intervention yet. But boost Alyssa's security detail. And make sure Rivers knows we're watching him. He turned to his desk and pulled out a set of architectural plans. Now about the other matter. Luca opened his folder. The property adjacent to Rivers' site is secured. The owner was more than happy with our offer. Excellent, Victor said, spreading out a map of the Riverside district. Rivers' entire project relies on access through this corridor. Without it, his design collapses. And with the zoning commission now re-examining his permits, Luca added, thanks to an anonymous tip. Victor marked several spots on the map. Start environmental testing here, here, and here. If there are protected species or contamination, we'll use it. As they coordinated details, Victor's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number read, we need to talk about Nina. Meet me tomorrow, 8 p.m., the Blue Room, Dorian Rivers. Victor showed it to Luca, who shook his head immediately. It's a trap. This comes right after he meets with Walsh. Way too convenient. I agree, Victor said, already typing a reply. The Sentinel Hotel lobby. 7 p.m. Come alone or don't come at all. The Sentinel was owned by an old friend and had top-tier security installed after an incident with a stalker and a celebrity guest. It was public enough to prevent violence and private enough to keep surveillance at bay. Luca still looked uneasy. You're really going to meet him? Victor's eyes gleamed with quiet menace. Know your enemy, Luca. I want to see what he thinks he has left to offer. If it's a threat, he gave a cold smile. Then he'll learn why no one in this business crosses me twice. As Luca left, Victor poured himself another scotch and moved to the window. In the distance, Victor could see the glow of the Riverside district where Rivers' troubled project still clung to life. Soon, very soon, those lights would go out for good. His phone rang. Alyssa. Despite the late hour, he answered immediately. Dad, she said, her voice sounding stronger than it had since the accident. When can I come home? Aunt Lisa's driving me crazy with her kale smoothies. Victor chuckled, the sharpness in him softening in the way it only ever did for his daughter. Day after tomorrow, just as we planned. The doctors want to be sure you're really ready. I am ready, she insisted. Then, after a pause, I need to talk to you about Mom. She's been trying to reach me through my friends. Victor's jaw tensed. What do you want to do about it? Another pause. I want the truth, Dad. All of it. Even the parts you've been shielding me from. In that moment, Victor didn't just hear his daughter's voice, he heard his own, echoed back through her resolve. Alyssa was truly his daughter. When you come home, he promised, you'll get the full truth. Every piece of it. And then you can decide for yourself what you want to do about your mother. After the call ended, Victor sat staring at the phone. Alyssa deserved honesty. And once she knew everything, he was sure she would understand why Nina and Dorian had to pay fully for what they had done. The Sentinel Hotel lobby was the epitome of understated luxury marble columns, soft lighting, and muted gold accents. Victor arrived half an hour early, nodding at the familiar security personnel from past dealings. He chose a corner table with a clear view of all entrances and exits, then gestured to his server. Macallan 18. Neat. Settling in, he waited. Dorian Rivers arrived exactly at 7 o'clock, looking markedly less composed than the man in the photos Victor had studied. His designer suit was sharp, but couldn't mask the strain in his posture or the dark circles under his eyes. Delaney, Dorian greeted, sliding into the seat across from him. He didn't offer a handshake. Victor gave only a nod and took a measured sip of his scotch. You said you wanted to talk. Talk. Dorian's jaw tightened at the dismissive tone. This situation's gotten out of control. I think there's a way we can reach a solution that benefits both of us. Benefits? Victor echoed, his voice laced with contempt. What exactly could you offer that would benefit me? Your wife wants a divorce. You want revenge. Let's not pretend otherwise. Dorian leaned in, his voice low. I can make sure the divorce is quick. Quiet. No fighting, no headlines, no dragged-out litigation. Nina will accept whatever minimum settlement you offer. Victor laughed genuinely, but with no trace of warmth. And why would you do that? Because the project means more to me than Nina does, Dorian admitted. The Riverside development is my legacy. If I lose it, I'm finished in this industry. And you think I'm behind your problems? Victor's face remained calm, though inwardly he relished the desperation seeping into Dorian's voice. Don't insult me, Delaney. The permit delays, the sudden environmental concerns, the strategic property purchases blocking my access, your fingerprints are all over it. Dorian's confident veneer faltered just slightly. You're dismantling everything I've built, he said. Victor studied him in silence, then spoke coldly. Let's be absolutely clear. You slept with my wife. You stole from me. And through your recklessness, you nearly killed my daughter. And now you want to negotiate? Dorian's expression hardened. Business is business. What happened with Nina and the accident, that was personal. Regrettable, but separate. Nothing is separate, Victor replied quietly, the threat in his voice unmistakable. Every action has consequences. You're only beginning to feel yours. So that's it. No room for discussion? Victor stood, buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate care. There's nothing left to discuss. You damaged what matters most to me. Now, I'm going to take everything that matters to you. He tossed a few bills onto the table, starting with Nina. Dorian's face reddened with fury. What's that supposed to mean? Victor gave a smile that never touched his eyes. She reached out this morning. Seems she's rethinking her choices now that her credit cards are maxed and her lover can't support her lifestyle. He leaned down, lowering his voice to a whisper. She told me everything, Dorian. Every scheme, every plan the two of you had to siphon off my money. Even the offshore accounts where you've been hiding investor funds. The color drained from Dorian's face. She wouldn't. Nina's always been a survivor, Victor said, straightening. Self-preservation has always been her strongest suit. He turned to leave. Good night, Mr. Rivers. I suggest you speak with your attorney soon. As Victor walked away, he could feel Dorian's burning stare on his back. The offshore accounts had been a calculated bluff, but Rivers's reaction confirmed he'd hit a nerve. He made a mental note to have Russell dig deeper into Rivers's finances. Outside, Lee waited by the car. How did it go? As expected, Victor replied, sliding into the back seat. He's desperate. Making mistakes. Call Alexis Palmer, tell her to move up the media rollout. And I want those environmental test results on my desk by morning. Luca nodded, noting it on his phone. Alyssa called. She's coming home tomorrow instead of the day after. Your sister is bringing her. Victor's features softened. Good. Get the house ready, he said, then paused. And Luca, make sure Nina knows Alyssa is returning. Let's see what she does with that information. The next morning brought developments that exceeded even Victor's expectations. Russell arrived at his office before 7 a.m., clearly energized despite the hour. You were right about the offshore accounts, the investigator said, dropping a thick folder on Victor's desk. Rivers has been skimming investor money for years. But here's the big one, some of it traces back to known criminal syndicates in LA. He's laundering money, Victor murmured, flipping through the evidence, a slow, satisfied smile spreading across his face. This is better than I hoped. There's more, Russell continued. After your meeting last night, Rivers made contact with Garrett Walsh again. They met for over an hour at Rivers's hotel. Victor's expression darkened. Did your people catch the conversation? Not exactly. But Walsh left with a thick envelope. Rivers also accessed a gun safe in his suite afterward. Victor nodded, unsurprised. He's getting reckless. Planning something desperate. Should I alert the authorities? Not yet. Victor glanced at his watch. Alyssa comes home today. Double the security detail. Make sure they're armed. If Rivers or Walsh make a move toward my family, stop them. Russell looked uneasy. Victor, if you believe there's an imminent threat. I said I'm handling it, Victor cut in. Just make sure my daughter is protected. After Russell left, Victor picked up the phone and called Alexis Palmer. It's time, he said. Release everything we have on Rivers today. By noon, the story had gone wide. Dorian Rivers, once promising developer, now under fire for financial fraud, environmental violations, and potential ties to organized crime. His connection to Nina Delaney, wife of respected builder Victor Delaney, added a salacious twist that guaranteed widespread media coverage. Within hours, Rivers' investors began publicly distancing themselves. His development permits were suspended, and the district attorney's office announced a formal investigation. Victor observed the fallout from his office, not with joy, but with a cold, calculated satisfaction. The destruction was unfolding exactly as intended, methodical, complete, and unstoppable. His phone rang. Victor, it's Tobias Wells. Nina's attorney just withdrew from the divorce proceedings. She's now asking to meet with you directly, no legal representation. Victor raised an eyebrow, though the timing didn't surprise him. Interesting. Schedule it for tomorrow morning. Your office. Are you sure that's wise? Without her counsel present. It's fine, Tobias. I want to hear what she has to say. Ending the call, Victor returned to the financial reports on his desk. Phase 2 was nearly complete. Rivers' career was in ruins, criminal charges loomed, and Nina was alone, vulnerable, and scrambling for footing. Now came the final phase, the total dismantling of their lives, their reputations leaving them with nothing but the bitter clarity of how completely they had been outplayed by the man they'd once underestimated. As evening neared, Victor left the office early to welcome Alyssa home. He'd arranged her favorite dinner, made sure her room was exactly as she liked it. Whatever chaos Rivers and Walsh were plotting, Victor would shield his daughter from it. She had already endured enough collateral damage. He was reviewing final security protocols with Luca when his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number read, "You've won nothing yet. This isn't over." Victor handed the phone to Luca, who immediately began tracing the origin. Rivers is spiraling, Victor remarked coolly. Good. Desperation breeds mistakes. Luca looked up. Security team confirms Alyssa and your sister are at the gate now. They're bringing them in. Victor nodded, slipping any signs of the vendetta from sight. For now, he would give his full attention to Alyssa's return. The reckoning for Nina and Rivers could wait a few more hours. When he heard the cars outside, he straightened his tie and walked to the door. Whatever came next, Alyssa's well-being remained his highest priority. He would shield her from the consequences and, when the time was right, reveal the truth she deserved. The doorbell rang. Victor composed himself and opened the door, only to find himself staring down the barrel of a gun. Garrett Walsh stood on the doorstep, gun trained on Victor with steady focus. Behind him, a visibly shaken Dorian Rivers gripped Alyssa's arm. Lisa stood frozen in terror. Inside, Walsh ordered, voice calm and clipped. No sudden moves. Victor backed slowly into the foyer, his mind racing through contingencies. Where was Luca? Where was the security team? They're taking a nap, Walsh said, reading Victor's thoughts. They'll wake up with headaches, but they'll wake up. Whether you do depends on how this goes. Rivers shoved Alyssa forward. Victor caught her in his arms, holding her protectively. Her face still bore bruises, but her gaze was fierce, not fearful. Dad, she began. He gave her shoulder a small, firm squeeze. Not now. Lisa, Victor said evenly. Take Alyssa upstairs. Victor spoke, his tone composed despite the gun aimed at his chest. Lisa, take Alyssa upstairs. Rivers let out a harsh laugh. No one's going anywhere, Delaney. Your daughter stays right here as insurance. Victor turned his gaze on Rivers, the intensity in his eyes so chilling that Rivers instinctively stepped back. If you touch her again, Victor said quietly, there won't be enough of you left to identify. Walsh motioned with his weapon. Everyone. Living room. Now. Once they were inside, Lisa and Alyssa sat together on the sofa. Victor settled into the armchair across from Rivers, and Walsh stood guard by the doorway. Rivers began pacing, anxiety radiating off him. You've destroyed me, he hissed. My investors have bailed, the DA's freezing my assets, and my name's in ruins. All because your wife preferred me over you. Victor remained unervingly composed. And what did you hope to accomplish by barging in here with a gun? Killing me won't fix anything. No, Rivers snapped. But it might bring some satisfaction. He forced himself to calm down. But that's not why we're here. You're going to make this right. Fix what exactly? Victor asked coolly. You're going to call off your people at the DA's office. Release a public statement saying the accusations were a misunderstanding. Put the Eastern property back on the market. And you're going to wire $10 million into an account I'll give you as compensation for the damage you've done. Victor allowed a thin, cold smile. Or, Walsh stepped forward and leveled his gun at Alyssa. Or we start with your daughter's kneecap and work our way up until you reconsider. The air in the room seemed to freeze. Victor's expression darkened, his voice dropping to an icy whisper. You've made a fatal miscalculation. Rivers gave a shaky laugh. You're in no position to make threats, Delaney. Dad, Alyssa said suddenly, her voice calm and steady. It's Mom. Everyone turned to her, confused. What? Rivers barked. She's outside, Alyssa said, nodding toward the window. She's been following me since the hospital. Rivers and Walsh exchanged tense glances. This wasn't part of their plan. Victor instantly understood. Alyssa was improvising, creating distraction, buying time. He felt a flicker of pride. Nina's here? Victor asked, playing along. Check if she's alone, Rivers ordered. Walsh moved cautiously toward the window. That brief lapse in focus was all Victor needed. In one swift motion, he reached under the armchair cushion and drew a handgun, one of several he'd stashed throughout the house after the incident. Down, he shouted to Alyssa and Lisa. He fired, the bullet striking Walsh in the shoulder just as the mercenary began to turn. Walsh staggered, wounded but still on his feet. Victor dove to the side as Walsh's return fire shredded the chair he'd just vacated. Rolling behind a heavy oak credenza, Victor fired 2 more shots, forcing Walsh to retreat behind the doorway for cover. Panicking, Rivers lunged toward Alyssa, whether to grab her as a shield or out of sheer desperation was unclear. He never made it. Alyssa, injured but not helpless, lashed out with a sharp kick to his knee, sending him stumbling. Then Lisa, summoning unexpected courage, snatched a heavy crystal vase and smashed it over Rivers's head. He collapsed, an unconscious heap of designer fabric and disastrous choices. Realizing his position was compromised and his employer down, Walsh fired a few wild rounds into the room before fleeing toward the front door. Victor advanced cautiously, unwilling to let the mercenary escape, but putting his family's safety first. Just as Walsh reached the front door, it suddenly swung open. Luca Harmon stood there, blood trickling from a cut on his temple, but his gun was steady. Drop it, Luca commanded, his Marine training evident in his firm stance and unwavering aim. Walsh hesitated, weighing his options. Bleeding from Victor's shot and trapped between 2 armed men, he slowly lowered his weapon to the floor. Wise choice, Victor said, keeping his gun trained on Walsh as Luca moved in to secure the mercenary with zip ties. Back in the living room, Alyssa and Lisa had Rivers similarly restrained with belts from Victor's collection. The developer was still dazed from the blow to his head. I called the police when I came to, Luca explained. They should be here any minute now. Found the rest of the security team unconscious but alive. Victor nodded and went over to Alyssa's side. Are you hurt? She shook her head, her composure impressive given the situation. I'm okay. But Dad, there's something you should know. Mom really was following us. I saw her car when we left Aunt Lisa's. Victor frowned, scanning the street visible through the front windows. No sign of Nina. Had Alyssa simply made that up as a distraction, or was Nina genuinely tracking them? The question became irrelevant as police sirens sounded nearby. Within minutes, officers swarmed the house, taking statements while paramedics treated the injured. Rivers and Walsh were taken into custody, their charges now expanded to include attempted murder, kidnapping, and assault. Hours later, after the police had left and Alyssa was resting upstairs under Lisa's watchful eye, Victor sat in his study with Luca, reviewing the security failures that had allowed the break-in. They used military-grade tranquilizer darts, Luca explained, still looking ashamed despite his heroics. Silent, effective. Walsh knew exactly what he was doing. You handled it well under the circumstances, Victor reassured him. But we need to upgrade everything. No more risks with Alyssa's safety. Luca nodded solemnly. I'm already on it. He hesitated, then added, Victor, there's something else. During the police investigation, they found documents in Rivers's car, records of transactions between him and Nina, communications about their plans. Victor raised an eyebrow. What kind of plans? It seems they were plotting more than just an affair. Nina had been systematically collecting information on your business dealings, sensitive projects, client relationships. Rivers was using that to approach your competitors, offering inside information. Cold fury washed over Victor. The betrayal went deeper than he'd imagined, industrial espionage on top of everything else. The police have added conspiracy charges against Rivers. They're looking for Nina now, to question her as well. Victor leaned back in his chair, absorbing the news. Where is she? No one knows. She checked out of the Fairmont yesterday and hasn't been seen since. Her credit cards haven't been used. A soft knock interrupted them. Alyssa appeared in the doorway, looking pale but resolute. I'm ready for the truth now, Dad, she said quietly. All of it. Victor exchanged a glance with Luca, who nodded and quietly left the room. As the door closed behind him, Victor gestured for Alyssa to sit across from him. It's not a pleasant story, he warned. Alyssa's expression hardened, reminding Victor painfully of himself. I almost died because of them. I deserve to know why. Victor nodded and began to speak, revealing everything: Nina's affair, the financial theft, the industrial espionage, and finally, the cruel coincidence that had placed Alyssa at the same intersection as Nina and Dorian during their reckless, intoxicated drive. When he finished, Alyssa sat in silence for a long moment, absorbing the full weight of her mother's betrayal. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, though tears shimmered in her eyes. I don't want to see her again. Ever. Victor reached across the desk and took her hand. That's your decision to make. And what happens now to them? She asked. Victor's expression darkened. Rivers is looking at serious prison time for tonight's events alone, not to mention the financial crimes and his part in your accident. As for your mother, you're not done with her, are you? Alyssa asked, her insight sharp. Victor couldn't lie. Not to her. No, I'm not. Alyssa nodded slowly. Good. She stood then, visibly drained. I'm going to bed. Good night, Dad. After she left, Victor remained in the study, staring at the wall of family photographs he hadn't yet taken down. In each one, Nina smiled beside him, and Alyssa the image of the perfect wife and mother. All of it a lie. His phone rang. It was Tobias Wells. Victor, sorry for the late call, but I thought you should hear this right away. Nina just contacted my office. She's requesting emergency protection. Protection? From whom? From you. She's filing for a restraining order, claiming she fears for her life after what happened with Rivers tonight. Victor gave a short, humorless laugh, genuinely amused by the audacity. Where is she? She wouldn't say. She's communicating through a new attorney, Camille Weston. Very aggressive. Well-connected. Victor recognized the name. Weston had a reputation for being ruthless in divorce cases. Interesting choice. Let me guess, she's claiming I orchestrated everything. That this was all a setup to frame Nina and gain sole custody of Alyssa. Tobias's silence was confirmation enough. How did you know? Because it's what I would do if I were in her position, Victor replied coolly. A desperate counterattack when every other angle has failed. What would you like me to do? Victor paused a moment. Proceed with the divorce as planned. Don't contest the restraining order. It's meaningless now that Alyssa's stance is clear. But Tobias, find out who's funding Nina's legal team. Camille Weston isn't cheap, and Nina's assets are frozen. As he ended the call, Victor moved to the window and looked out at the city. Nina's desperate move would fail. The evidence against her was overwhelming, Alyssa's testimony devastating. But her decision to fight rather than fold was unexpected. Perhaps he had underestimated her. He wouldn't make that mistake again. 2 months after the home invasion, Victor sat across from Camille Weston in a deposition room, his expression blank as the attorney's aggressive questioning entered its third hour. Tobias Wells had advised against the meeting, but Victor had insisted he wanted to see for himself what angle Nina and her new counsel were playing. Mr. Delaney, Weston said, her tone deliberately irksome, isn't it true you had financial motives for wanting Mr. Rivers's development project to fail? No, Victor answered plainly, offering nothing more. Weston gave a tight smile. Let me rephrase. Your company submitted a bid for the Riverside project and lost to Rivers's firm, correct? My company never bid on that project, Victor replied. It wasn't a suitable fit for our portfolio. Yet you acquired property adjacent to the development site specifically to obstruct progress. Victor offered a measured smile. I purchase real estate across San Francisco whenever investment opportunities present themselves. The timing was purely coincidental. Weston's frustration flickered across her face before she regained control. Mr. DeLacqua, your wife claims that your vendetta against Dorian Rivers began long before you discovered their relationship, that you intentionally set out to destroy him professionally, using their affair later as a convenient justification. Victor leaned in slightly. Ms. Weston, my wife embezzled close to $2 million from our joint accounts to fund her lover's failing venture. She colluded with him to leak proprietary information from my business to our competitors. And most egregiously, she and Rivers caused the crash that nearly killed my daughter, then chose to keep partying rather than go to the hospital. These aren't accusations. They're verifiable facts. Weston sifted through her notes, clearly searching for a new line of attack. Let's talk about the night Mr. Rivers and Mr. Walsh came to your residence. You had a gun ready, didn't you? Almost like you were expecting them. I had security protocols in place due to prior threats I received, Victor replied evenly. A precaution that proved entirely justified. How convenient, Weston said with a trace of sarcasm. Tobias Wells cut in at last. Objection. Counsel is editorializing, not questioning. Weston waved the comment aside. Fine. Mr. DayDaypia, one last question. Where were you on the night of April 15th, between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m.? The question was a clear setup. Victor couldn't yet see the trap, but he didn't let it show. At home with my daughter and our security team. Anyone besides your employees who can confirm that? My daughter can. Weston's smile turned sharp. A 16-year-old dependent who stands to inherit your entire estate? Not exactly a neutral witness. Victor said nothing, recognizing the rhetorical nature of the remark. No further questions, Weston concluded, gathering her things. We'll follow up regarding continuation dates. After she left, Tobias turned to Victor, visibly uneasy. She's laying the groundwork for something tied to April 15th. We need to find out what happened that night. Victor nodded. Have Russell look into it immediately. He glanced at his watch. I have to get back to the office. We're finalizing the Harbor Point deal today. Back at Delaney Construction, Luca was already waiting in Victor's office, his face grim. We've got an issue. Valerie Thompson's been talking to the press about Alyssa. Victor froze. What exactly has she been saying? She's implying Alyssa's story might be rehearsed. That Alyssa was actually in regular contact with Nina until you stepped in. Luca handed over a tablet. Advanced drafts of articles were queued for next day publication. Nina's trying to sway public opinion since she's losing in court, Luca added. Victor scanned the articles, his anger growing. The narrative cast Nina as a victim, suggesting the affair was her only escape from a controlling, emotionally abusive marriage, and accused him of manipulating Alyssa to cut off her mother. Contact Alexis Palmer, Victor said, passing the tablet back. We need to control this narrative now. Already on it, Luca replied. She's preparing a statement that highlights the documented evidence of Nina's actions. But there's more, Luca added, hesitating. Russell dug into April 15th. There was a break-in at Nina's hotel suite that night. Nothing was reported stolen, but the room was torn apart. Hotel security footage shows someone resembling Garrett Walsh near the suite around the time of the incident. Victor's expression darkened. Walsh was working for Rivers at that point. Why would he break into Nina's room? That's where it gets interesting, Lucas said. According to Russell's contacts, Rivers and Nina had a major falling out just before the break-in. Witnesses at the hotel bar overheard them arguing something about money and documents. The implications were clear. Rivers had likely sent Walsh to retrieve something from Nina documents that could further incriminate him in their schemes. Where was I that night? Victor asked, thinking back. At a business dinner with the zoning commissioner and 3 other developers, Luca replied. Dozens of credible witnesses, all above reproach. Victor gave a brief nod. That was a relief. Whatever Weston is trying to imply, Luca added, you're covered. Still, Victor said, frowning, something about this doesn't sit right. Keep digging. If they're building a frame job, I want to know every angle before they spring it. That evening, Victor returned home to find Alyssa waiting for him in the study, her expression troubled. Dad, Valerie Thompson called me today. She said Mom's in the hospital. Victor set down his briefcase. What happened? She wouldn't say. Just that Mom had a setback, and she's asking for me. Alyssa twisted her fingers nervously in her lap. I told her I didn't want to see her, but you're wondering if you should, Victor finished for her. Alyssa nodded, suddenly looking younger and more uncertain than she had in months. Is it wrong that part of me still cares what happens to her? Even after everything? Victor sat beside her, choosing his words carefully. Your feelings aren't wrong, Alyssa. She's your mother. That bond is complicated, even after betrayal. Would you be angry if I wanted to see her? No, Victor said honestly. I'd be concerned for your safety, your emotional health, but not angry. Whatever you choose, I'll support you. Alyssa leaned against his shoulder, a gesture that reminded him of when she was little. I think I need to see her. Just once. To say everything I need to face. Victor nodded, though his thoughts were racing. Nina's sudden hospitalization and this request, coming right after the press campaign and Weston's deposition questions, felt far too calculated. I'll arrange it if that's what you want. But I'm coming with you. You don't trust her, Alyssa said quietly. I don't trust any of them, Victor replied. Not with your safety or your peace of mind. The following morning, Victor's instincts were confirmed when Russell called with an update. Nina's not in the hospital for medical reasons, he said. She checked herself into the Lakeside Wellness Center private, upscale, specializes in trauma recovery and substance treatment. Victor let out a sharp breath. She's crafting a sympathetic image. The wounded wife seeking healing while the controlling husband is out for revenge. Smart. There's more, Russell added. I found out who's paying for Weston's legal team, Mason Bennett. Victor's grip on the phone tightened. Mason Bennett, an old rival in the construction industry. The two had clashed for years, Bennett consistently losing major contracts to Delaney Construction. He held a long-standing grudge against Victor. That he was now aligning with Nina was troubling, but not shocking. Interesting, Victor said coldly. Keep tracking Bennett's movements and Russell? Look into every one of his current projects. I want to know which ones are vulnerable. After ending the call, Victor sat at his desk, piecing it together. Nina had always been adept at building alliances when it served her. Securing Bennett's support meant she'd offered something in return, most likely confidential information about Delaney Construction. Enough to give Bennett a competitive edge. His phone buzzed with a text from Alyssa. Still want to see Mom. When can we go? Victor responded, I'll make arrangements. Tomorrow afternoon. Setting the phone down, he knew this meeting would mark a pivotal moment. Nina would no doubt attempt to use Alyssa's visit to reinforce her narrative of being the wounded victim, but she had misjudged both Victor's foresight and, more importantly, Alyssa's intelligence and emotional resilience. Tomorrow would bring them face to face for the first time since the accident, the woman who had torn their family apart, and the man who would make certain she paid the price. Victor would be prepared. The only question was whether Nina understood what she was truly walking into. Lakeside Wellness Center looked more like an upscale retreat than a rehab facility. Manicured lawns surrounded elegant buildings that overlooked Lake Merced. Victor drove through the security gate with Alyssa seated beside him, both of them silent, steeling themselves for what was sure to be a tense confrontation. Remember, Victor said as he parked, you don't have to stay if it gets too hard. We leave the moment you say so. Alyssa nodded, her face set with resolve despite the nervous tension in her posture. I know what I want to say to her. They were led to a secluded garden courtyard where Nina waited, looking noticeably more fragile than Victor had expected. Her designer clothes hung loosely on her frame, and without her usual flawless makeup, the toll of the last few months was plain to see. But Victor saw through the appearance carefully curated to evoke sympathy. The image of a woman undone by forces beyond her control. Alyssa, Nina breathed, rising unsteadily to her feet, eyes welling with tears as she reached out with open arms. Alyssa took a small step back, keeping her distance. Mom. Nina's arms dropped, her eyes shifting coldly to Victor. Whatever warmth had been in her voice vanished. I didn't expect you to come. I go where my daughter goes, Victor replied evenly, taking a seat at the wrought iron table. Especially when her safety is at stake. Her safety? Nina's tone sharpened. You're the one who put her in danger, Victor, dragging her into your obsession with Dorian. Alyssa's expression hardened. Stop it, Mom. Dad didn't put me in danger. You and Dorian did when you ran that red light and caused the accident. And then you didn't even bother to come to the hospital because you were too busy partying. Nina blinked, visibly shaken by Alyssa's bluntness. Sweetheart, you don't understand what really happened. I've never been the monster your father makes me out to be. I saw the evidence, Alyssa interrupted, her voice icy. The bank records showing you stole Dad's money. The texts between you and Dorian talking about selling Dad's business secrets. The police report from the crash. Documents can be doctored, Nina insisted. Your father's always been skilled at manipulating facts to serve his purpose. Victor stayed silent, letting Alyssa steer the conversation. She was handling herself better than he ever could have hoped. Then explain, Alyssa said, her tone unrelenting. Why didn't you come to the hospital when Dad called? Why did you tell him you were with someone special when your daughter was in critical condition? Nina's carefully constructed demeanor faltered. I'd been drinking. I didn't grasp how serious it was. You grasped enough to lie about where you were, Alyssa shot back. And enough to keep partying instead of coming to see me. Nina's expression shifted, adopting a mask of wounded dignity. I've made mistakes, Alyssa. Terrible ones I'll regret for the rest of my life. That's why I'm here, trying to get help, trying to become someone worthy of your forgiveness. Is that before or after you tried to frame your daughter's father for crimes he didn't commit? Victor said evenly, his tone deceptively calm. Nina's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? April 15th, Victor replied. The night someone trashed your hotel room. The night your high-priced attorney started implying I was behind it, accusing me of threatening you. A flicker of genuine confusion passed across Nina's face before she could conceal it. My room was never ransacked, she said slowly. Victor studied her closely. If she was acting, she was remarkable. But it was just as likely that she truly didn't know about the break-in. Interesting, he said. Maybe you should talk to Mason Bennett about it since he's the one footing the bill for your legal crusade. At Bennett's name, Nina's face closed off. My personal relationships are no longer your business, Victor. They are when they affect Alyssa, he said, leaning forward slightly. Whatever you and Bennett are trying to pull, it won't work. The truth is clear, proven, witnessed, and undeniable. The truth? Nina scoffed. You mean your truth? Alyssa rose abruptly to her feet. I've heard enough. I came here to say one thing. Mom, I don't want you in my life. Not now. Maybe not ever. What you did, it wasn't just betrayal of Dad. You betrayed me, too. The composure Nina had clung to finally gave way. Alyssa, please. I'm still your mother. I still love you. If you loved me, Alyssa said, her voice trembling slightly, you would have been there when I needed you. She turned to Victor. Dad, I'm ready to go. Victor stood, placing a steadying hand on Alyssa's shoulder. We're done here. As they walked away, Nina called out, her voice rising with desperation. Victor, this isn't over. You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming. He turned back briefly, his expression blank. That's where you're wrong, Nina. It was over the moment you chose Rivers over your own daughter. In the car, Alyssa stayed quiet until they were past the gates of the wellness center. She's not sorry for what she did, she said at last. She's just sorry she got caught. Victor nodded, quietly impressed by her clarity. Some people aren't capable of real remorse. What did she mean about what's coming? An empty threat, Victor replied with more confidence than he felt. Still, her mention of Bennett confirmed his growing suspicions. But her confusion over the hotel incident raised troubling new questions. Later that evening, after making sure Alyssa was settled with friends for a movie night, Victor met with Luca and Russell in his study. Tobias Wells joined the meeting via video, his expression grim. Camille Weston filed new motions today, Tobias reported. She's alleging that you engineered the whole Rivers and Walsh scenario to frame Nina. Victor exhaled sharply. They're seriously claiming I staged the entire thing? They're accusing you of hiring Walsh to stage the home invasion, Tobias said, claiming you knew Rivers would be blamed. According to the filing, they have phone records showing you communicated with Walsh before the break-in. Luca frowned. That's impossible. Victor never had any contact with Walsh. Russell shifted uncomfortably. Actually, there might be an explanation. Remember when we were monitoring Rivers and Walsh? We used a burner phone registered to a shell company technically owned by Delaney Construction's parent holding group, Russell said. If someone looked hard enough and had the right contacts, they could fabricate a link. Victor understood immediately. Bennett has those contacts in the telecom industry. Tobias looked uneasy. This complicates our case. The court might. The court will see through this pathetic misdirection, Victor interrupted. Walsh already confessed on record implicating Rivers as the one who hired him. Alyssa and Lisa witnessed the entire event. And most importantly, Rivers admitted to hiring Walsh in exchange for a reduced sentence. About that, Russell cut in. Rivers recanted his confession this morning. His new statement claims you paid him to take the fall. The room fell into a heavy silence as the implications sank in. Bennett and Nina had clearly been busy managing to get to Rivers in custody and persuade him to change his story. They're desperate, Victor finally said. Which means they're planning something bigger. What's our move? Luca asked. Victor thought a moment. Tobias, request a postponement on the divorce proceedings. Cite these new allegations, we'll need time to investigate. And Bennett? Russell asked. I think it's time I speak to Mason Bennett directly, Victor replied. Luca nodded. I'll arrange a meeting. Private. Neutral ground. As the others left to carry out their assignments, Victor remained in his study, eyes drifting over the family photographs he hadn't yet taken down. One caught his attention, a snapshot from a vacation in Lake Tahoe 3 years ago. Nina stood beside him, smiling, her arm wrapped around Alyssa. They had seemed happy then, or at least, he had believed they were. Had there been signs? Small cracks in the facade that hinted at Nina's real nature? Victor wasn't one to indulge in self-doubt, but he found himself wondering how he had missed what had been hiding behind the perfect wife's carefully managed image. His phone rang. The caller ID was blocked. He answered cautiously. Delaney. Mason Bennett's voice came through, unmistakable, polished and smooth, with that cultivated Harvard accent that clashed starkly with Victor's hard-earned success. I hear you've been looking for me, Bennett said. Interesting choice of allies you've made lately. Victor didn't respond to the jab. Nina's a remarkable woman, Bennett continued. Intelligent, resourceful, and determined to see justice done. Is that what you're calling embezzlement and endangering a child now? Justice? I call it correcting a power imbalance, Bennett replied coolly. You dominated that poor woman for years, controlled her finances, cut her off socially, drove her to desperate measures to escape your influence. Victor nearly laughed at the absurdity of it. Is that the version she sold you along with whatever company secrets she dangled as payment? She's been refreshingly transparent, Bennett admitted. Call it fair compensation for my support in her difficult situation. Victor's voice dropped, low and dangerous. Let's be clear, Mason. Whatever scheme you and Nina are running, it's not going to work. The evidence against her is rock solid. It's already in the hands of my legal team and the DA's office. Evidence can disappear, Bennett replied smoothly. Witnesses can change their minds. Even your precious daughter may come to see things differently. At the thinly veiled threat, Victor's temper flared. If you come anywhere near Alyssa, what I did to Rivers will seem merciful compared to what I'll do to you. Bennett let out a soft chuckle. Still the brute in a tailored suit. This is exactly why Nina had to get away. That violence just beneath the surface. Is there a point to this call, Bennett? Victor asked coldly. Or did you just want to show off your poor taste in business partners? Actually, Bennett said, his tone shifting, I'm calling with an offer. Bennett's tone shifted to one of crisp, calculated professionalism. Withdraw the embezzlement charges against Nina, agree to her settlement terms, and I'll make sure certain sensitive information about your less than legitimate dealings never finds its way to the authorities. That made Victor laugh. I don't have any illegitimate dealings, Mason. Unlike you, I've never had to bribe officials or compromise on safety to land contracts. Everyone has secrets, Victor. Even you. This conversation is over, Victor cut in. The next time we speak, it'll be through our attorneys. He ended the call, his thoughts already racing through the implications of Bennett's threats. Whatever Bennett thought he had was either fabricated or deeply misunderstood. Victor had built his company with ruthless discipline, but within the bounds of the law. Still, Bennett's confidence implied he believed he had something of value. Victor picked up his phone again and dialed Russell. I need you to dig into Bennett's current projects. See if anything connects to my past developments. Already looking, Russell replied. Initial findings show Bennett Construction recently bought land adjacent to your Westlake development, same one from 5 years back. They've been conducting soil analysis and structural surveys in the area. Victor frowned. The Westlake project, a luxury condo complex, had faced major hurdles, including soil contamination that required expensive, specialized remediation. It had ultimately been a success and stood as one of Delaney Construction's flagship accomplishments. Send me everything you find on Bennett's acquisition and those tests, Victor ordered, and accelerate our timeline. Whatever he and Nina are planning, we need to stay ahead. As he ended the call, Victor turned to the glowing city skyline, his expression steely. Bennett and Nina thought they'd flipped the script, that they were now the predators and he the prey. Their arrogance suggested they believed they held powerful leverage. But they'd forgotten the one unbreakable rule of going up against Victor Delaney. He never entered a battle without already knowing how it would end. And like all before it, this one would end the same way, with his enemies thoroughly and permanently destroyed. The conference room at Tobias Wells' law firm was hushed as Victor examined the spread of documents before him. Morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting a glow over the product of 3 grueling days of investigation. They located the original environmental report, Tobias said at last, breaking the silence. The one that was altered before submission to the city. Victor nodded, unsurprised. Bennett's team has been thorough. The Westlake project did hold a secret, just not the one Bennett was likely expecting. Initial tests had revealed dangerously high levels of carcinogens in the soil, far beyond what appeared in the final report filed with regulators. But the discrepancy hadn't been caused by deceit. The remediation was real and effective, Luca confirmed, tapping on the independent lab data their team had compiled. The altered report didn't hide contamination. It hid the proprietary remediation process you pioneered for that site. Victor had poured millions into developing a groundbreaking bioremediation system for the Westlake development, a method that proved 3 times as effective as conventional techniques, and had since become a closely guarded trade secret of Delaney Construction. The original report hadn't been falsified to cover up a thread, it had been carefully edited to shield the details of a powerful innovation from falling into the hands of competitors. Bennett thinks he's uncovered evidence of a cover-up, Victor concluded, when in reality, what he's found is proof of innovation, something he could never create himself. Tobias exhaled, visibly relieved. So there's no liability here? None at all, Victor confirmed. The remediation went well beyond what regulations required. But Bennett doesn't know that. He thinks he's found my weak spot. And Nina pointed him in that direction, Luca added. She would have remembered the report being altered from your conversations back then, but not the reason why. Victor's phone buzzed. A message from Russell. Package delivered. Response expected within the hour. Good, Victor replied. Is everything set at the Sentinel? Luca nodded. Full security, all recording devices legally placed, and witnesses in the adjacent room. Victor rose and adjusted his tie with deliberate care. Then let's finish this. An hour later, Victor sat alone in a private dining room at the Sentinel Hotel. The space had been carefully prepared, hidden but legal surveillance, discreet observers, and security personnel stationed throughout the premises. The door opened, admitting Mason Bennett, Camille Weston, and unexpectedly, Nina. Victor's soon-to-be ex-wife appeared far more composed than she had at their last meeting. Her tailored suit and flawless makeup now exuded confidence, not vulnerability. A full delegation, Victor said dryly. I'm flattered. Bennett offered a thin smile. We felt all relevant parties should be present. I assume you've reviewed what Russell delivered this morning? Your last-ditch distraction, Camille Weston cut in. Barely worth our time. Victor shifted his gaze to the attorney. Ms. Weston, I invited Mr. Bennett. Your presence is tolerated, not necessary. Bennett raised a calming hand. Camille's here at my request, Victor. As is Nina. He placed a folder on the table and slid it across. We have a proposal for you. Victor didn't reach for the folder. Let me guess. You think you've found proof of environmental violations at Westlake. You're threatening to take it to regulators unless I cave to your demands. Nina leaned forward, unable to hide her eagerness. We don't think, Victor. We know. The original reports show contamination levels far above what was submitted to the city levels that may still be harming residents. A compelling theory, Victor replied evenly. Flawed, but compelling. This isn't a negotiation, Bennett said. It's an ultimatum. You will drop all claims against Nina. You will retract every accusation about her involvement in Alyssa's accident. You will accept her divorce, terms, joint custody, and half of everything. And you'll hand over development rights to the property that's blocking the Rivers Riverside project. And if I refuse this generous offer? Victor asked. Camille Weston's smile was icy. Then the EPA, the district attorney, and every family living at Westlake gets a copy of those reports along with expert testimony about the health risks caused by your alleged cost-cutting. Victor let the silence stretch as he studied each of them. Bennett's self-satisfaction, Weston's calculated composure, Nina's triumphant gleam. Then, finally, he spoke. Before I answer, he said, turning toward Nina, I have a question for my wife. Did you ever stop to ask why I modified that report? Nina hesitated, her expression faltering. To cover up the contamination to avoid paying for proper remediation. You even bragged about how much money you saved on that project. I boasted about the efficiency of the remediation system I developed, Victor corrected her. A system that cost $3 million more than conventional methods, but eliminated all contaminants in half the time. Nina's confidence wavered. You're lying. No, Victor replied evenly. The modified report was meant to protect the technical specifications of a proprietary system, one that's now among my company's most valuable assets. A system competitors like Bennett would give anything to duplicate. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick binder. This contains full documentation of the Westlake remediation designs, processes, and quarterly independent testing results since completion, all confirming contamination levels well below regulatory limits. He slid the binder across the table to Bennett. Have your experts review it. Bennett didn't touch the binder. The certainty in his expression faltered. This could be fabricated, he muttered. It could, Victor agreed. Just like your so-called evidence. The difference? I have nothing to gain from fabrication. The residents of Westlake are healthy because there's no contamination. Your threat is hollow, Mason. Sensing the tide turning, Camille Weston stepped in quickly. This doesn't change the facts in Nina's case. Your personal vendetta against her and Dorian Rivers is well documented, Victor interrupted. Speaking of documentation, let's hear from some witnesses. He pressed a button on the table's intercom. Send them in. The door opened. Luca entered, followed by a man unfamiliar to the group, middle-aged, modest in appearance, and adjusting his glasses with visible nerves. This is Dr. Harold Freeman, Victor said, Chief Environmental Engineer for the Westlake Project and the developer of the bioremediation system you're accusing me of hiding. Dr. Freeman gave a small nod. The system was groundbreaking, still is. It completely breaks down carcinogens using engineered bacteria tailored to the specific soil composition at Westlake. There's nothing else like it on the market. Bennett's demeanor shifted again from shaken to calculating. So the report modification was to protect intellectual property, not to cover up contamination. Exactly, Victor confirmed. But that's not the only misinterpretation we're clearing up today. He nodded at Luco again. The door opened once more. This time, the man who entered made Nina visibly recoil. Garrett Walsh, flanked by two security officers, stepped into the room in handcuffs. What is this? Camille Weston snapped, half rising. Clarity, Victor answered. Mr. Walsh has agreed to share details about recent events, in particular the night of April 15th. Walsh looked straight at Nina. Mrs. Delaney hired me 3 days before the incident at the hotel. She asked me to stage a break-in to make it seem like someone was threatening her. Part of a plan to build a case against her husband. Nina's face went pale. That's a lie. I've never seen this man before that night. He came to our house with Dorian. We met at the Pinnacle Bar on April 12th, Walsh continued in a neutral, businesslike tone. You paid me $5,000 in cash to trash your hotel room while you were out. You gave me an access key and clear instructions on what to damage and what to leave untouched. Victor turned toward Bennett. This is the core of your conspiracy theory. Mason, a fake crime scene orchestrated by Nina herself to appear as the victim. Bennett turned to Nina, his jaw tightening. Is this true? Of course not. Nina's composure cracked. He's lying. Victor paid him to say this, just like he paid Rivers to retract his confession. Just like you paid Rivers to make it in the first place. Victor shot back. The difference is, Walsh's statement is backed by hotel security footage, financial transactions, and phone records, Victor said. Authentic ones, not the manipulated connections you tried to fabricate between him and me. Camille Weston, sensing the situation slipping beyond control, attempted to redirect. This is all very dramatic, Victor, but ultimately inadmissible in court. Testimony from a convicted felon. I'm not finished, Victor cut in sharply. During the break-in investigation, Russell uncovered something interesting on the hotel surveillance system footage of Nina meeting someone the day before the incident. Someone who wasn't Dorian Rivers. He nodded to Luca, who activated the screen on the wall. The footage played, Nina embracing a man in the hotel lobby. The man's face flickered into view. Mason Bennett. Victor's voice remained calm, almost conversational. Your affair with my wife predates her involvement with Rivers, doesn't it, Mason? In fact, you introduced them. Rivers was your proxy, a buffer to keep your hands clean, while Nina extracted information from me. Bennett's face had gone rigid. He neither confirmed nor denied the accusation. You engineered the entire thing, Victor went on. Rivers was just the tool. You were after insider intel, my projects, bidding strategies, proprietary systems. And Nina was your conduit. Nina suddenly stood. This meeting is over. Camille, we're leaving. Sit down, Nina, Victor said firmly. To everyone's surprise, she hesitated, then returned to her seat. Your relationship with Bennett goes back at least 2 years, Victor continued. Long before Rivers came into the picture. But Mason was too smart to get caught directly. So he found Rivers a man with debt, no scruples, and nothing to lose to play the boyfriend. And if things went south, the fall guy. Victor leaned forward. What I still don't know is whether Alyssa's accident was deliberate or just the reckless fallout of your double life unraveling. I would never hurt Alyssa, Nina whispered, tears welling. The accident was just terrible timing. Dorian had been drinking. I tried to stop him. I tried to save the performance, Victor said, ice in his voice. Your actions speak louder. When our daughter needed you, you chose to maintain the lie instead of being there for her. He turned to Bennett. Here's my counteroffer. Nina will receive only what the law allows in the divorce. And given the evidence of embezzlement and corporate espionage, that's not much. She will not contact Alyssa unless Alyssa initiates it. And you, Mason, will remove yourself entirely from any projects linked to mine, especially the Westlake expansion. Bennett's voice was low, but the edge was gone. Or what? Or, Victor replied, the evidence of your conspiracy with Nina, your recruitment of Rivers, and your attempt to blackmail a competitor goes public. Immediately, he gave a cold smile. Your shareholders are already nervous about your stalled projects. Imagine how they'll react when they find out their CEO has been playing corporate spy instead of focusing on business. Camille Weston, seeing the inevitable outcome, slowly closed her folder. We'll need to confer privately before responding. Of course, Victor said smoothly. Take all the time you need. Just know if you leave this hotel without accepting these terms, the evidence is released. Immediately, after Bennett, Weston, and Walsh were escorted out, Victor and Nina remained alone in the conference room for several minutes, neither of them speaking. The weight of 16 years together and all that had been broken hung heavily between them. Why, Nina? Victor finally asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. We had everything: success, comfort, a beautiful daughter. What made you throw it all away? Nina's laugh was bitter. Everything. We had everything you wanted, Victor. Your company, your schedule, your priorities. I was just furniture, beautiful decoration for your perfect life. That's not true, is it? When was the last time you asked what I wanted? What my dreams were? Nina's anger seemed to drain away, leaving only exhaustion. I was dying inside, Victor. Slowly disappearing. Bennett made me feel seen for the first time in years. Victor considered her words, searching his memory for proof to refute them. Had he really been so consumed by his work and ambitions that he failed to notice his wife's unhappiness? Perhaps. But even if that were true, it didn't justify what came next. Even if that's the case, he said finally, it doesn't excuse betraying your family, endangering our daughter, trying to destroy me. No, Nina admitted quietly. It doesn't. I lost myself somewhere along the way. Became someone I never thought I could be. She looked up, meeting his eyes directly. I'm sorry about Alyssa. Whatever you believe about me, I love our daughter. Victor nodded. acknowledging her sincerity on at least that point. Then accept the terms, he said. End this cleanly. Give her a chance to heal without dragging this into a long legal battle. Nina studied him for a long moment. You really are ruthless, aren't you? Even now, knowing I've lost everything, you won't show an ounce of mercy. Mercy is for those who deserve it, Victor replied coldly. You chose your path, Nina. Now you can choose how this story ends with some dignity intact or in total destruction. 6 months later, Victor stood in his office, gazing out at the San Francisco skyline as the setting sun bathed the buildings in gold and amber. The divorce was finalized, with Nina accepting the minimal settlement he'd offered. Bennett Construction had pulled out from all projects near Delaney Developments and was reportedly struggling financially after several major investors backed out following rumors of corporate espionage. Dorian Rivers had pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for testifying against Bennett, receiving a 5-year sentence. The Riverside project was acquired by Delaney Construction at a fraction of its previous value and was now being redesigned as a mixed-use development, set to become the company's new flagship. Most importantly, Alyssa was thriving. The physical scars from her accident had faded, and while the emotional wounds lingered, she had shown remarkable resilience. She had chosen limited, supervised contact with Nina, monthly lunches that Victor neither encouraged nor discouraged, respecting his daughter's decision to maintain some connection with her mother despite everything. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Luca entered carrying a folder. Final report on the Bennett situation, he announced, placing it on Victor's desk. His company filed for this morning, restructuring, but industry analysts don't expect it to survive. Victor nodded, unsurprised. Nina moved to Chicago last week. She's staying with her sister and looking for work in event planning. Luca hesitated. She left a letter for Alyssa. It's been screened, nothing manipulative or concerning. Victor considered for a moment. Give it to her. Alyssa can decide whether she wants to read it. Luca nodded. There's one more thing, Tobias called. The DA is closing the investigation into the industrial espionage allegations, insufficient evidence to proceed without your cooperation. Victor smiled thinly. As expected, once Bennett and Nina were out of the picture, there was no reason to pursue criminal charges. It was better to let them live with the consequences of their actions. After Luca left, Victor returned to the window, watching as the city lights began to flicker on in the growing darkness. The vengeance he had engineered was complete, his enemies destroyed not by violence or illegality, but through the careful, methodical use of truth, leverage, and power. He felt no joy in their downfall, only the cold satisfaction of justice served. Nina and her conspirators had tried to take away what mattered most to him: his daughter's safety, his company's reputation, his carefully constructed life. They had failed, and in failing, had lost everything themselves. Victor Delaney turned from the window to his desk, where blueprints for the Riverside development awaited his attention. The past was settled. Now it was time to build the future stronger, more secure, and free from those who had proven unworthy of his trust or mercy. In Victor's world, betrayal was unforgivable, and vengeance, when necessary, was absolute. Those who had learned this lesson would never forget it. Those who hadn't yet would, in time. Victor would continue, as he always had, protecting what was his with relentless determination and ruthless efficiency. No mercy for the deserving. No forgiveness for the disloyal. These were the principles he lived by, the code that had brought him success, and now, finally, justice. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.